Drugs are menacing our society.
People with money, they get more respect.
They're killing our children.
It was all about having fun and living life.
Meth is spreading like a cancer.
It was just so easy to bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was too easy.
We're at the tip of the iceberg in its epidemic proportions.
She had this reign of, drug dealing, but for me, she was my mom, Lori.
I wasn't thinking how it was going to affect people's families, even my own.
She was like, I'm a kingpin, I'm not an addict.
She was out there cutting lines out on her hood of her car, which to me was a little outrageous for Lori.
Well, I thought, as long as nobody was getting hurt, they just kind of overlooked it.
Our goal is to identify and target the largest trafficking organizations. That's why we were investigating Lori. Methamphetamine was out there, but it was primarily a West Coast drug. Lori was truly a kind of a pioneer. She was one of the first major targets we identified that was moving significant quantities of methamphetamine from the West Coast to Iowa, upwards of 10 pounds at a time, which we had not seen before. With methamphetamine, you stay in this long enough, you're going to end up in one of two places. You're going to end up dead, or you're going to end up in prison. And it's only a matter of time. Unbeknownst to her, the state and local officers had been working on Lori for some time. They'd been gathering lots of intelligence on her. Watching the Wildside Bar, we had identified numerous people in the organization. Your goal is to try to flip them and move on up through the chain. But the difficulty in cracking an organization like Lori's is the fear factor. Lloyd's a pretty scary looking guy. You had multiple guys in this organization that fit the exact same profile. These are biker guys, big guys, tough guys. Everyone knew they had access to multiple weapons.
As a child, it was something that was very deeply encoded in us. Snitches get stitches and ditches, you know.
In addition to the fear factor, you had loyalty. The combination of those two things makes it very difficult to get people to roll over. The loyalty factor in this case, I think, was stronger than a lot of others that you see.
I was arrested on state charges. I had 7 counts. They asked me questions about Lori for sure, and what I did and where I got my stuff, and they just tried their best to get you to talk about anything, and I just couldn't do it. Because she was my friend. I mean, I couldn't do that to her. I couldn't.
We were trying to bring continuing criminal enterprise charges against the principal members of this group to take the entire organization down. So what's required to prove it is that they are in a position of supervision over 5 or more individuals, minimum of 3 overt acts, whether they were sales or transporting, and that they gained substantial income from the enterprise. And that type of an investigation takes longer than the standard rip and run and arrest type case. We reached a point where we were able to get a broader historical picture of what had been going on. We weren't ready to move against the whole group, but at the same time, we were still actively moving dope. So we decided to gather additional evidence and disrupt what they were doing.
I was heading in town, and I saw all these cars, just one after another, and I could see them eyeing me. So I had a cell phone in the truck, and I called Floyd, because I knew Floyd was sitting at the dining room table, and he could see down the road. I said, keep an eye out. He said, all right. I went and did my dope deal. Then I went over to my friend Lisa's to cut my hair. And I called her to tell her I was on my way, and she goes, don't go home. I'm like, why? She goes, you guys just got busted.
And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you hear the helicopters, you see all these people running up, SWAT-looking type guys come rush the house. And they were beating on the kitchen door, and we were looking out the dining room door, like looking at them. Let us in, and, you know, my dad's like, what's unlocked? And then they, boom, break down the door, and come rush in, and grab everybody, throw them on the ground.
I got a call. Someone identified themselves and said, okay, there's nothing you can do, but this is happening right now.
And they said that Lori Floyd was being raided by the feds or whatever, and a lot of people out there. And I'm like, I just want to get my nephew out of here. You don't need to be around this, you know. But then I went down to the road, and the highway patrol finally told me that my birth mother had actually come out there and picked him up like 10 minutes before I got there.
I'd call again. Floyd answered the phone. I'm like, what the hell's going on? He goes, come on home. I'm like, fuck you. I thought he was going to set me up or something. No, I'm not going to. He goes, no, they're gone. I said, well, why are you still there? They came in, they brought search warrants, everybody handcuffed while they were searching.
They found 3 pounds of meth and $25,000 in my basement.
They collected every gun, every piece of paper, every photo. They took all the stuff and they just left. They didn't arrest nobody. And we're like, what the?
So I called him. There's my dad on the phone. He's like, it's okay, they're gone. He's like, you come back out. So I was like, oh, okay.
They frankly don't know what to think. They are wondering how'd they get here, and who's cooperating, who isn't cooperating, and why didn't they arrest us? Never really understanding that, well, we only didn't arrest you because we're continuing our case full speed ahead, and we're going for a much bigger piece of the pie.
I waited maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks, something like that. Now it was happening, but you know, when you're not getting drugs coming in, you're not getting money coming in. So I could only wait so long. I gotta keep this stuff up.
After a certain period of time of seeing nothing more happening from our end, she calmed back down enough to get back in business. But we were actively watching everything they were doing. And there were things happening to people around them that she was not aware of. Drugs were being seized, people were being locked up. After we executed the raid, we had lots of people all of a sudden starting to realize that, wait a minute, this is getting real. You're gonna come in here, you're gonna cooperate, or you're gonna go down with the rest of the ship.
As I'm going down the road, I notice this car is following me. So I pull up to a stop sign, and they pull up next to me. Where are you going? And you can tell they're feds. He says, we need to talk. Meet us at such and such time, because we've got information you need to know. I'm like, all right.
Prior to actually pulling the trigger on the indictment, we thought, you know what, let's take one more shot at Lori, because we found out that she was utilizing Mexican national sources of supply. And if we can get her cooperating before we arrest everybody and the cat's totally out of the bag, maybe she's gonna be in a position to actively assist us, and maybe, who knows what she can do, but let's find out.
So I went and bought this little tape recorder and put it down the front of my boot. He goes, we know your whole operation. We know everything about you, California, Arizona. We know what you're doing. So, and at this time, I've got my leg crossed and my tape recorder up because I want to make sure, you know, they heard everything. Because I thought, well, that's kind of entrapment. I'm like, okay, then what do you need from me, you know? He says, we're going to offer you a deal. You'll only get 10 years in prison if you work with us and give us information about Floyd, about the trip.
We were somewhat careful in what we said to her, but we did at the same time want to emphasize to her, the case was strong. And if she wanted to cooperate and really get the bang for the buck of her cooperation, this was the time to come in.
See, he was thinking that Floyd was the mastermind selling all this shit, and, you know, he didn't realize most of it was me.
We knew that Floyd basically worked with Lori, but mostly allowed Lori to run the show. He was there for security if needed.
But people knew if they were dealing with Lori, they were dealing with Floyd.
I said, how are you gonna give me only 10 years in prison? I mean, you're not a judge, you're not a jury. You know, so I would talk, argue with him. Thought I was a smart ass, but, and I wasn't afraid of him or anything.
She was smart, a little on the cocky side. I think Lori probably would have been successful in a legitimate business had she pursued it. And I think Lori was a person who could pretty much handle herself with just about anybody she dealt with.
And I took the tape. I hired a lawyer, but he said, Lori, the feds can do anything they want. So the tape didn't help any, but I thought I was pretty cool doing it.
We called her one day and asked her where we at, Lori. And it became very obvious that Floyd was standing right there with her, and she was having this conversation with us. So well, I guess Lori's not coming in. And we continued our investigation.
We waited, like nothing was happening. So I'm like, well, evidently they couldn't find anybody to testify against me. They couldn't find anybody to snitch me out. There was some reason they couldn't come arrest us. So we started laxing a little bit. And then once we figured, well, it must be over. I mean, we'd party for like a month straight, and they came back.
We finally just felt like we had enough not only to indict Lori, but to move forward and take the whole group down. And that's when we moved.
We were all sleeping. And I just woke up to a big boom.
The first two officers in were dealing with Floyd, who had come out of the bedroom. Myself and another officer went into the master bedroom, which was totally dark. There was just enough light I could kind of see some shadows in there. So I hit the person with the light, who did in fact turn out to be Lori, and I pinned her to the bed, told her not to move.
I felt a cold pistol barrel on my forehead. So I looked up, and it was a Fed sitting on top of me. I'm like, what do you want? He says, you know goddamn well what we want. Like DEA and FBI and ATF and OPD, I'm like, where's ACDC?
I heard a bunch of rustling, and then the first guy that came up to go run upstairs pointed a gun at me. But I think he realized immediately that it's a kid. I was 10 years old.
They brought Josh upstairs with me. I was sitting in the chair handcuffed, and so he started brushing my hair. Then I was talking to him real easy and trying to make sure he didn't get excited or scared, or we just kind of kept each other calm.
I think about an hour later, my grandparents came and got me. Last thing my mom said to me was, that she loved me and see me soon, because she was probably assuming the same thing I was assuming, that, whether it's that night or whether it's, a day or two later, we're gonna, get back together and everything's gonna be okay again. It just wasn't the case.
Like I said, I was thinking I'd be back because I'd get bonded out and everything. So I didn't realize that was gonna be the last time I seen him. When he combed my hair before they hauled me out.
That morning, we had probably 250, maybe 300 law enforcement officers execute simultaneous raids on about 14 or 15 locations.
They hauled us down to the Ottumwa police station, and when we walked down the stairs, all of my co-defendants were all there.
Floyd and Lori were like the captains, and then, they had lieutenants, and then my mom was probably more like a foot soldier. When the raid happened at my house, I was 15. 15 and pregnant. I was laying naked in my bed, and there were these men, like all over my house.
I've already been busted, I said. So I don't think you're supposed to be doing this to me again. They said, well, this is federal charges now.
There were ultimately 50 to 60 defendants that went to jail over this.